What if I told you that you actually already achieved ultimate spiritual enlightenment before you were even born? Sounds a little crazy, right? But what if humanity's most profound spiritual goals aren't about becoming something entirely new, but rather returning to a state you've already experienced? Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into some absolutely fascinating source material that maps the highest ideals of Eastern philosophy directly onto the biological timeline of human development. Let's get right into it.
So, here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the blueprint of life. Then, we'll explore the perfect womb, followed by Buddhist quiescent extinction. After that, we'll cover the shock of birth, and finally wrap up with Confucian moral discipline. Section 1. The blueprint of life, mapping the universe through human development. We have to start by looking at human biology here, because understanding the literal physical process of birth provides an incredible roadmap for these really complex, esoteric religions. Basically, if you want to understand the universe and its philosophies, the source text argues that you just need to understand how a human being is actually formed.
Okay, so early human life breaks down into three distinct stages. First up, we've got bote, or gestation. This is that initial moment of conception, where the egg is wrapped up and implants into the uterine wall. Second is yangsheng, which means nurturing. The text uses a really brilliant analogy for this phase. It's like curing cement. The mother's body takes those 9 months to perfectly form and harden the physical vessel, so literally nothing else needs to change except its size. And finally, we have yokde, which translates to bathing and swaddling. Think about ancient times. A traditional outfit wasn't actually complete until you tied that final waist belt. So yokde represents being fully clothed and completely ready to exist in the outside world.
Moving on to Section 2, the perfect womb, the fetal state of absolute peace. Let's see how this biological timeline builds into our first really profound philosophical connection, starting deep inside the mother's womb during that yangsheng nurturing phase.
Inside the womb, the fetus is experiencing an absolutely flawless environment. I mean, every single physical need is completely met by the mother. There's no need to eat, no need to digest, and amazingly, no need to even breathe using your own lungs. The source text describes this exact state as musing musang, which means no breath, no sound. The baby is completely protected from all outside contact. That means zero conflict, zero annoyance, and absolutely zero worldly affliction. Spiritually speaking, it's described as hapji waziri, a state of being perfectly united with the ultimate truth, holding on to the celestial memories of the universe.
Which brings us to Section 3, Buddhist quiescent extinction, recreating the prenatal state. This section brilliantly illustrates how Buddhist monastic practices are, quite literally, attempts to recreate the physical and spiritual perfection of the fetus inside the womb.
So, the absolutely crucial point here is this concept of Zhengmiao. This translates to quiescent extinction, and it is the ultimate spiritual goal in Buddhism. The source material argues something fascinating. This highly sought-after state of absolute peace, completely devoid of worldly afflictions and suffering, is biologically identical to the state of a baby right before it's born. So Buddhism isn't actually trying to create some entirely new state of mind, it's literally trying to return to the womb.
Just think about the direct physical parallels for a second. When a monk retreats to a deep, completely silent mountain, they are literally trying to find an isolated sanctuary to mimic the mother's womb, a place with no outside voices, no conflicts. And when a monk sits in the lotus position with their legs crossed, they're physically folding their body to mimic the curled-up fetal position. And what about deep meditation? It is entirely focused on breath control. They are slowing their breathing down to the absolute minimum, desperately trying to return to that no breath, no sound state of the umbilical cord.
And here's the fascinating biological spiritual detail you probably didn't know. Why do Buddhist monks shave their heads? Well, you might just think it's about humility, right? But hair is actually described in the text as a physical antenna that constantly picks up chaotic worldly energy from the stars and the universe. So to truly achieve the isolated, quiet perfection of the womb, a monk must shave off these antennas to completely block out that chaotic energy. Isn't that wild?
Section 4. The shock of birth. The loss of the perfect environment. Because, as we all know, this womb-like perfection simply cannot last forever. And that brings us to the most dramatic shift in our timeline. The sudden, jarring shock of birth. The very moment that umbilical cord is severed, that perfect sanctuary completely collapses. Suddenly, the baby is just thrust into a chaotic reality. It actually has to breathe with its own lungs. It feels the biting cold and has to be dressed in clothes. It feels hunger. It has to eat. It has to digest. worldly afflictions just come pouring in all at once. And in the trauma of this violent transition, the baby forgets its celestial memories. It is left completely helpless.
And this leads us to Section 5, Confucian Moral Discipline, navigating the chaos of the world. This traumatic transition out of the womb and into human society requires a completely different approach. Because the Buddhist ideal of sitting quietly in a cave, well, that just doesn't help you survive a chaotic society. And this is exactly where the strict rules and structures of Confucianism come into play.
The newborn baby is at this point entirely helpless. The source text beautifully describes the infant as a raw seed or a sprout that has just been planted in a field. It doesn't know how to do anything on its own anymore. So to survive in this entirely new, completely chaotic environment, that raw sprout requires intense, strict cultivation.
To actually survive, the child needs izhou, which translates to moral discipline and strict scolding, all based on the ancient wisdom of the sages. Because the absolute perfection of the womb is totally gone, superiors and parents have to step in to teach the child how to navigate all this chaos. They literally have to nag the child, sit up straight, don't spill your food, make sure you wear your clothes properly. So Confucianism is really the ultimate pragmatic tool to bring order to a human being who has just violently lost their biological paradise. Now, we should also briefly highlight Taoism, or Xiando, and how it fits into this trio. While Buddhism seeks to regress to the peace of the womb and Confucianism builds rules to organize the born world, Taoism focuses on the wondrous, invisible spiritual mechanics. They call this the Zhouhua. It's basically the study of the underlying nothingness and the divine orchestration that guides the soul into the physical body in the very first place. It's the mechanics behind the whole shebang. To summarize everything we've covered in today's explainer, Buddhism is fundamentally this deep, spiritual desire to return to the physical and mental peace of the mother's womb, essentially escaping the chaotic world. Confucianism, on the flip side, is the harsh but entirely necessary reality of the world after birth. It's the necessity of rules, discipline, and even scolding to just function and survive in a society that is full of chaos.
So I want to leave you with one final thought today. As you navigate the inevitable chaos and afflictions of your own life, which of these two paths are you naturally drawn to? Do you find yourself wanting to shave off your antennas and retreat to the silent peace of the womb? Or do you lean into the discipline and structure required to conquer the field of the real world? It's a pretty profound choice. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to keep questioning the universe around you.